Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your breakfast bankroll for Tuesday, April 26, 2022. And what a morning, what a start to the day. 2 days before the NFL takes over Vegas, the Strip, the Bellagio, and the NFL draft. Uh, I heard there were a lot of brooms last night in Boston as the Celtics not only dispose of the Nets, but sweep the Nets. And as they get ready, most likely to face the Bucks, hopefully this weekend, so our guest can be high above courtside, maybe on Saturday. We are blessed and honored today to have Julian Edlow, someone who I was able to meet during March Madness, which seems like years ago, right here, right behind us at the West Gate. We had some great times for a few days, watching some games, talking sports, talking shop, and today we get to have him on. So let's bring him in. From DraftKings, the one and only Mr. Julian Edlow.
Good morning, Jeff. It is great to be on with you. And as you said, some broom coming out in Boston. I did not see it quite happening that way, but here we are. It's a good team. They dug in. They won close games, which was a knock on them during the regular season. So that was very good to see. I'll give you a cool stat that I saw from Lucid Sports Fan on Twitter, Mark Van Dusen. I used to do Celtics blogging with him way back in the day. We're talking like 10 years ago. The Celtics sweep of the Nets, they won those 4 games by a combined 18 points. In 2008, when the Celtics won the championship, they played the Hawks in the first round. That series went 7 games. They lost 3 games in that series. They won all 4 games on their home floor. All 4 of their home wins in that series were by 19 or more points. So they won each game of that series that went 7 games by more points than they won these 4 games of the sweep in combined.
I'm going to take you to the All-Star break. I'm not going to go back to the start of January. Our buddies at 98.5, Mr. Felger and Maz, they had someone that came on there and did a last 24 games or 26 games of the season. And they projected the Celtics to go 22-4, to be the number 1 seed, and then lose first round to the Hawks. And well, they got the 22-4 pretty close to how they finished. Let's backtrack. Let's go to January and let's go to today. What the hell happened other than the fact that they bought in?
I think it was a lot of that, a lot of buying in. And I do like what Brad Stevens did at the deadline. Sometimes I guess it's a small change, and I don't have the answers because everybody wants to go back and find the last example of the Celtics, a team that was 18-21 and 11 seed in the Eastern Conference in season, and by making just a couple of small changes to the rotation, to the role players, turned into potentially the best team in the NBA. And I don't know if we have an example of it. People are looking for it. I don't know if there is one. But I would say that aside from buying in, getting healthy, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum missed some time at the beginning of the season. The small moves that Brad Stevens did make helped create some kind of chemistry that works as a defensive unit and just in the locker room. So getting Derek White, who didn't even have that good of a series against the Nets, but was a nice piece down the stretch in the regular season, bringing Daniel Tice back, especially with Rob Williams eventually getting hurt. That was a piece that they needed. Opening up potentially more minutes for Grant Williams and what he's become. And then you also get rid of a guy like Schroeder and get some backup guard minutes to Peyton Pritchard, who helps space the floor with the shooting. Whatever they did with that change to the rotation and the change of the pieces just worked. And in terms of a basketball standpoint, in terms of the personalities in the locker room. That's the only thing that I can say about it. And Tatum and Brown playing the best basketball of their careers probably is a big piece of it. Like Jason Tatum can be the best player in the NBA. Maybe he is the best player in the NBA right at this current moment. So when you have that type of piece, good things can happen based on the way that he's playing, both ends of the floor right now.
I'm gonna take my take here, and it's probably not gonna be well liked. Back in the off season last year, I wasn't buying it in this regards. We knew kind of sort of inside that Danny was going to fly the coop. That wasn't a shocker. The fact that Brad was paid and paid handsomely for, I think it was the next 4 years, I didn't think they were going to just, the Celtics didn't want to see him go coach somewhere else. And on the Celtics dollar, never mind succeed. So they moved Brad upstairs. And then in comes Udoka. They start the year off kind of horribly, I'd say. I'm a big Jaylen Brown fan, and I did say these two can't work. They can't work. I think you could get a boatload for Tatum, but they were not going to let Tatum go. All of a sudden, presto magic, I said they bought in. During the off season, were you buying what they were selling? Did you think this was going to work? Are you a Brown and Tatum can work? Obviously they can. We're seeing it. But were you buying it preseason?
No, I think that there was some work to be done. And, it was surprising to see Stevens go up into the front office. And of course you get you have to think, I don't know if they intended it this way or not, but you have to at least think of the idea. Are they just putting him in this role because they owe him so much money that they can't get out of? And I didn't know. Right now, I would say no, because I like what Brad Stevens has done. I think he's done a good job. Would he have, Danny Ainge would not let go of assets, and Brad Stevens seems to be willing to do it. Example, to get rid of Kemba Walker, to get Al Horford, you had to give up the 16th pick in the draft. Danny Ainge doesn't make moves like that. He wants somebody else to include the 16th pick in the draft to him so that he can get another Gershon Yabusele, who we never see again. Brad Stevens willingly gave up a pick that, in my opinion, didn't have much value. And look at how crucial of a piece Al Horford has been in comparison to Kemba Walker. So it worked. Giving up, we always had that argument, like, do you have to win the trade? People are afraid to deal with Danny Ainge because Danny Ainge has to win the trade. Brad Stevens seems to be okay losing a trade, I guess, on paper. If you're going to swap two old expiring contracts in Kemba and Horford and give up a pick, now OKC, Presti has won the deal. Presti's collecting all those assets in OKC. But the Celtics got a piece that can still play. I'm buying in now. I wasn't originally. I'm buying in now on what I see from Brad Stevens in the front office. I think he's done a good job there. I forget where else I was going. Was there a two-part question? I feel like there was more to say.
I think it was just more on the preseason. Were you buying? And second of all,
the Brown and Tatum.
Yes,
Brown and Tatum. Okay, so I've been active on Twitter throughout the course of the year with some people. I don't think you need to trade either of them. It's obviously working right now, but at the time in December, in January, some people were saying Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, both untradeable. I don't see it that way. I see Tatum as somebody whose ceiling is the best player in the league, and he is probably untradeable. I think Jaylen Brown is difficult to trade, but I don't think you have to consider him untradeable. Hang up the phone was the term that was used. If anybody calls on Jaylen Brown, you immediately hang up the phone. I'm not hanging up the phone. I'll listen to anything that seems reasonable, but I'm also, I do have to eat a piece of humble pie as well, because the Celtics have far exceeded my expectations on a quicker turnaround time than I imagined in terms of making it work with those two guys.
We talked before we started the show already from our friends at the Westgate. Celtics minus 200, Bucks minus 175. Plus 175, excuse me.
I saw that move. Did that move overnight?
I saw it initially when Jeff put it out there. Has it already moved?
I saw that too, but I did see this morning that that Celtics have come down to minus 180, which makes sense.
So
I
you
mean, that
got
was a big price.
exactly. So they initially get what they wanted was some initial Bucks money, and you're betting obviously on the come because we don't know what's going on with Middleton on that part of it. Um, Series wise, we talked about it, and I think you need to explain to what you were telling me and Kiefer. I'm not someone that releases minus 200s, minus 180. For me, series NBA, NHL playoffs, Major League playoffs. I like series plays because you don't have to get into each game individually. It'll allow you to get into a game 3, 4, 5 situation where you could hedge, you can double down, you have chances to really exceed your profits. Now, what you were saying, and you work for DraftKings, so this is a perfect lead in. Explain to everyone how you approach a minus 200, minus 220 initially with the Celtics. How you, I don't want to spend the 200, but you were talking about it behind the scenes before we started.
Yeah, plenty to say about the price on this series, but I'll start with your specific question. Just the creation of series spreads now makes every series in the NBA bettable versus when it's just straight series lines. And my example, the perfect example is this Bucks Bulls series that, we're going to have game 5 in Milwaukee on Wednesday night. The Bucks are a minus 550 favorite, 10-point favorite to win that game. They were up over minus 1,000 on the series line. So like there's just nothing you can do with it really, unless for some reason you thought the Bulls were going to win the series and you feel like taking a long flyer on that, which I don't think many people did. The series spreads, you just lay games, which is a fantastic way to bet a series because it gives you, so the series spread on that was Bucks minus 2.5. It opened even money on DraftKings Sportsbook. It went all the way to minus 195. But it's still, even laying minus 195, it's a lot better than minus 1,200 and especially if you think the Bulls are only going to get one game, which seems like their ceiling, and it looks like that, like it's going to go that way with Milwaukee being a minus 550 favorite on Wednesday. Just lay some games. So that's what I have in that series. I did not do that with Celtics Nets in the first round. That was a near pick'em series. I just took the Celtics and bet them in individual games, and it wound up going well. The sweep there was plus 1,200. Didn't have any of that, but that got there. So for this Bucks series, now that we're finally, it looks like going to see the Celtics in a spot where you're laying a significant amount of juice, maybe it is minus 175, minus 180, and you can bet it if you want to, but you'll probably get some plus money on the Celtics laying a game and a half, which means to close the series out in 6 or less. This might be their toughest series along the way, so I don't even know if I'll be willing to do it. I do believe in the Celtics in the series overall. But just in terms of a way to get out of laying more juice than you want, if you're confident in the team and think they'll get it done in a, before a game 7, essentially, just lay some games.
So if you're sitting there with the Bucks with the closeout, they're 10-point favorites. They're minus 550 tonight. You're holding that ticket. Do you get cute and just say, "Hey, you know what? I'll take the Bulls plus the 10 too, just in case," or do you just let it ride?
That's what I'm thinking about. I'm not going to hedge with any Bulls money line, but that middle, that's a big middle, and that's a lot of points. Especially when you're already in at a good price on the money line on that series spread. So that's what I'm still considering. But yeah, that's the way that you said it is the way that I would play it. Not a small bet on Bulls money line, but like a 1-unit bet or whatever on Bulls plus 10. And if you get that Bucks 7-point win or whatever it may be, perfect. Cash all the tickets and we move on to that next round. So I like going for those middles rather than just hedging a little bit on the money line.
Did you have any action, or I on our closing bell yesterday? I talked and I thought Toronto plus the 8 was a definite play. I did say though I expected Philly to find a way, obviously, to win that game, but I thought that was way too many points, and Toronto just goes box to wire, and now Doc's staring at a 3-2 series, heading back to Toronto, and you don't want to obviously get to that game 7. Any stakes in that series?
No, I took Philly on Saturday. I thought they were going to sweep. You know, taking the momentum off that overtime game and the Embiid game winner. I thought they were going to have it. I wrote up in my best bets article on DK Sportsbook on DK Playbook. I was on the Celtics and Mavericks last night, which worked out. I lost to Gary Trent prop in the Sixers game, but I didn't have a side in that game. But I did say it feels pretty safe if you want to take Sixers money line and you don't mind attaching it to another night, whether it be the Heat tonight or the Warriors tomorrow night or whatever. I think that's a safe leg. Obviously, you lost by 15 at home. It was not a safe leg. So I'm glad I didn't get involved. I'm sorry if you took it after I wrote it up as something that you used. Doc Rivers with these series leads is just awful. And now this game 6 is trending towards a pick 'em. Philly's like -1.5 now on DK Sportsbook. So this could be like, imagine the pressure. We know we've never seen the 3-0 down 3-0 comeback in the NBA, but imagine the pressure if there is a game 7 in Philly, which is looking like a coin flip right now. If we get that game, that's going to be quite a bit of pressure on the Philadelphia 76ers. I've nothing on the series. So personally, I guess I would love to see Toronto pull it off.
Before we go to the NFL draft, I need you to explain to everyone not what you do for DraftKings, because I follow you on Twitter and we have your scroller down below where everyone can find you. For the newbie, for someone that is looking to kind of get their toes into the water, you do so much work, so much content on props. Explain where you're getting all your information. I know there's a million websites and I know what you do, trust me. But to someone that says, hey, I don't know anything about either one of these teams, but I want to get involved in the prop market, how would you get someone set up to what would your best advice be to get involved into the prop market?
Well, the first advice is to just follow the news, because more than and this is for NBA mostly, but more than matchups, the injury news is what creates the prop value. What does this person do with player X off the floor? Or what are the remainder, for example, what do the Raptors do with Fred VanVleet off the floor, an all-star this year? And VanVleet missed that game last night, obviously. So I'll just go to, some different sites. I think StatMuse does a really good job giving some of that information. Raptors players stats this season without Fred VanVleet. And Gary Trent Jr. was one of those guys that popped. He averaged close to 22 points per game in the 16 games he played without Fred VanVleet on the floor. So with VanVleet off, and maybe a little bit of value on Trent because he was sick with like the flu to start the series. He didn't do well in the first 2 games, came on strong in games 3 and 4. I thought there might be a little value there with him getting back healthy and VanVleet coming off the floor. So I played him over 19.5 points. He had scored 24 in each of the 2 games in Toronto. Of course, he didn't shoot very well. Low scoring game, wound up on 16. It lost, but you just got to be happy with the process and take the wins when they come, and trust, when you lose, trust that what you did is correct. It's a make or miss league, they say in the NBA, right? He didn't shoot well, needed a few more of those jumpers to go down, and it gets there. But trusting your process, knowing what to look for. I look for injuries much more than I look for matchups, unless it's a certain situation. Maybe you go to a LeBron game 7 point props have done really well in the past when he was at his height. Those narrative spots come from time to time, but mostly in the NBA, and this is way more regular season than playoffs. But if you just base off of injury news and go to props based off of that, you're generally going to do pretty well.
If I asked you on tonight's slate to give all the listeners the prop of the day, or something that you're eyeing, or something that you feel has a good chance to get to the window, or is it too early? It could be too early, Julian.
Yeah. So betting the I mean, again and again, in the playoffs, you can bet these games earlier because we don't get the load management, that type of stuff, that throws a wrench in everything. If I'm looking at these games, like Trey Young's had an awful series against Miami. This one is more matchup related. He scored in single digits in 2 of the 4 games so far. He hasn't even reached double figures scoring. He said it. He hasn't been defended like this since high school. This is the hardest series he's ever played in. It doesn't seem to be going Trey Young's way. So you want to look at his, and I haven't even seen what his point prop is tonight. I'm sure it's adjusted a little. Let me see where we're at on DK Sportsbook. DK Sportsbook has Trey Young 25 and a half points. That's a little lower than usual. But it hasn't been going well for him, especially on the road. So I would probably look either to a Trey Young under on points, or if I'm going to that later game, Brandon Ingram has been really good in that series against the Suns. You could look at some of his overs, but tougher matchup, I would say, on the road for Ingram. So probably Trey Young unders is where and I don't know if I'll play him, but that's probably where I'm looking for NBA props on just the Tuesday slate.
And that was 25 and a hook.
25 and a half. Yep. That is minus 115 to the under on DK Sportsbook.
All right, let's switch gears here. NFL draft on Thursday. A delight for a lot of people. I've been talking all week. I've been asked actually, and it was funny. Last night I was on with Anthony and Anthony Pepe, and he asked me my thoughts on the NFL draft. Am I one of these guys that gets all wired up and junked up and can't wait? And his words and my words kind of were the same way. I love the first day. I love it. I love to see the kids' reactions, the oohs and ahs from the crowd. And then day 2, you tune in for a little while. And then on Saturday, it's just like they're trying to fill content for you working at DraftKings. There are so many props out there. We've seen the big move on Trevon Walker going now first to Jacksonville. How you looking at the NFL draft? What's got you all lathered up? And are you, I guess, an NFL draft junkie?
I don't know if I'm an NFL draft junkie, but I put my work in because you can bet on it and because you can find an edge on it. So I love betting drafts. It's completely different than betting on games. You know, you're not going to get backdoored at the buzzer. You can't. There are no 20-point comebacks. It's betting on information. And sometimes we get bad information and it winds up being a loss. But in general, if you get going on your process early, for example, my favorite one, I think the best bet this year, if you got going early, Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, was a guy that thought of maybe as a top 5 pick, but safety generally, he's a really good football player, but safety generally isn't a position that you want to spend that high. So there was plus money available on Kyle Hamilton over 6.5 at one point in time. So got in on that. He's been going up and up and up after a slow 40 time and then working out for teams. And he's now set at 12.5. So he's moved a lot. That's just an example of paying attention, getting good numbers, getting good information, and going from there. Now you're in position to, if you want to hedge it, you can hedge it. See if you middle it. There's a chance he goes, I think he could go 11 to Washington, something like that, which is a position where you win both. But yeah, betting on the draft is all information. It's a completely different sweat than betting a game. I enjoy it because I'll put the work in, and it's part of my job to put the work in and put content out for the viewers probably watching this. So like that's how it all ties together. NBA draft as well. And I've always bet drafts going back to like 2017, 18. But I think the one that really got a lot more people into it was that 2020 NFL draft that happened right in the peak of the pandemic when sports weren't even back yet. So that was one where, for like 2 months, I was just getting NFL draft bets in. I had like 50 NFL draft bets because that was my work every day and there was nothing else to do. And it went extremely well. So ever since then, I think it's opened more people's eyes to getting in on draft betting.
I'm so glad you said that because that was my exact words. It was 2020 pandemic. Uh, I remember like it was yesterday, the Big East on that Friday, it was halftime and
Yeah.
then the lights went off and
All the
that was it. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And I have all these clients that are expecting content and the world shutting down. And so it enabled us to get out of our comfort zone. We started dabbling in some NASCAR. We did a lot of work on the NFL draft. We came up with Alex Smith, comeback player of the year on May 2nd, plus 1,600.
wow.
So this was some work, and the NFL draft was huge, was absolutely huge. So you were spot on, Julian, with that because it's now it football is around the clock. I mean, everyone eats, sleeps, drinks football, and you try to explain to people, guys, we got NHL playoffs coming up next week. We're in the middle of the NBA playoffs. Baseball season has started. You got the Kentucky Derby coming up on 2 Saturdays from now, and people,
Mhm.
that's all they want to talk about is football. And then throw the curveball in, Julian. The USFL. People are hammering the USFL.
It's all on the board. It is all on the board. There's only so much I can get to, and there's only so much you want me to get to because once you start stretching to your sixth, seventh sport, you're just probably not going to be getting good stuff. So yeah, I mean that's all out there. I try to keep it tight to basketball and football, and I throw some baseball out there, which I did well in the postseason. Not a great start to this season. We'll see where it goes, but yeah, right. I mean, right now I'm trying to keep it to NBA playoffs and NFL draft. But again, that's a couple days away. So once the NFL draft, once we get through that weekend, and the NBA playoffs start to slow, less and less games, um, that's when you just reset, look towards the next football season, pretty much, because that's like you said, football is always around the corner.
So if I go back to the draft for a second and I
Mhm.
say Willis and Pickett, it's always been it lately a quarterback heavy draft, as you saw last year. How many quarterbacks are going to go in the first round? This year there's two, and then does Detroit grab one late at the end, or do they wait till the second round? Um, so if I say Pickett, Willis, I know what the under over was and where it's trending. I heard last night that there won't be a quarterback going until maybe what is it, 20 with Pittsburgh?
20 to Pittsburgh, 19 New Orleans, I think. Um, yeah, quarterbacks are going to slide in this draft, in my opinion. And I'm looking right now so I can get because these are changing all the time. What is the up to the moment line that we have on DraftKings right now? Kenny Pickett is up to 16 and a half. He was heavily juiced down at 12 and a half before. Malik Willis has gone up from 10 and a half to 12 and a half. I don't think we're going to see a quarterback go until the late teens, early 20s in this draft. And that's why this draft is so much different, so unusual to bet. Last year, and just a tough draft to get the number one pick in. Not that people feel bad for the Jaguars because they get the number one pick all the time, but like last year, you get Trevor Lawrence. The year before, you get Joe Burrow. And, regardless of what you think of some of these guys, you get a Burrow, a Tua, a Herbert, all in the top 6 of that 2020 draft. Last year, you go Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, and then Fields and Mac Jones are mid-first round guys, all of which would have been the first quarterback taken. All 5 of those guys would have been the first quarterback off the board in this draft. So it just comes down to how desperate are these teams at the top. Your Carolinas, your Atlantas, your Seattles that could maybe use a quarterback, but they have plenty of other needs, and this is a deep draft at other positions. So I just don't think Willis and Pickett have high enough grades to justify using a pick in the first half of the first round on them. So I have what is it? I have Willis over 10 and a half and Pickett over 12 and a half in my plays that I put out on Twitter. Again, sometimes you miss the number and it's still okay. I would bet their overs today. I would have no problem with it. Willis over 12 and a half, Pickett over 16 and a half. I really think based on what I'm hearing off of the quarterbacks in this draft, that it's just not going to be that competitive to get one off the top. It's going to be when we get to the Saints and the Steelers, getting to that 19 to 20 range, then maybe somebody thinks about jumping up to 17, 18 if they really like them to cut those teams off. But again, if Pickett's at 16 and a half, I still don't think you have to worry because the 19, 20 range is where it starts, which means the picks that you jump up for, you're still cashing the overs.
Success in the wide receivers is kind of the new trend now as well. We saw Justin Jefferson 2 years ago. We saw Jamar Chase last year. Very, very, very good wide receiver class. I've seen some under overs of 5.5, I think, in the first round.
It's up to 6.5.
It's up to 6. Okay, so people are saying, hey, we're going to take the swing there. Any wide receiver props stand out to you, or is there I'm a huge Olave fan. I know what's his name? Was it Wilson, right? Well, no.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I know he was great as well. I like something about Olave really sticks out. I know the Alabama kid that was injured. He is a name that was floated with the Patriots. What are you seeing? Any decent props, or do you have any on the wide receiver end?
I have bet some. They seem to be receivers are going to go high in this draft. Number one, it's a good receiver class. Number two, look at how the offseason's gone. Like, look at the contract Marquez Valdez-Scantling got. Would you rather have Marquez Valdez-Scantling on that contract or take one of these rookies for 4 or 5 years and have him on a rookie deal? Younger, fresher legs, ready to prove themselves for another contract. Like, that's why you want these rookies. So I think wide receivers are going to go high and often in this class. And it shows, like, wide receiver is probably the toughest position to find any more betting value on. Because Jameson Williams opened, I think 18.5 or 17.5 on DK Sportsbook. And now is under 11.5 is minus 145. And part of that is discovering that, the torn ACL, he's come very far in his recovery. He'll probably be ready. If a team wants him, he'll probably be ready like within a month into the season. So there's really just not that much to worry about with him, which is great. He could easily be the first receiver off the board. Drake London, USC, he's going to go high. Garrett Wilson's going to be a top 10 pick, it looks like. And then you got the guys later in the round, like Olave, like you said, that also, can be very good contributors in the NFL right away and on good contracts based on their position. So that's why I think wide receivers are going to fly off the board. We're going to see a lot of them go. The one thing I will say in terms of draft advice for people, like you mentioned how you like Olave a lot. That's good. Like I like him a lot too. Just do not bet anything based on your opinion of a player, because our opinion on this show does not matter. We need to tap into the opinion of the decision makers, which are the NFL GMs, and what are they going to do? Because that's how you're going to win bets. You can I like Jacksonville to take an offensive lineman. If I'm them, I think they're protecting Trevor Lawrence. We'll see if they do that. But the heavy odds and what we're hearing is that it's going to be Walker probably and an edge rusher. So you got to make these bets based off of the information on what these decision makers are going to do and not how you feel about a player. Like you see whatever. You like Sam Howell from UNC. He was going to be the number one pick once upon a time. I'll just bet him under 45.5. I have no idea if he's going to go in the top 45 or not because we don't know what NFL decision makers are going to do. So that's what you want to base this off of, not, ooh, I like this player, da-da-da-da-da. But in that realm, I like a guy like John Mechie, who said it. He was 59.5. He's down to 56.5. I think he's going to go. So I have the under on John Mechie on 59.5. He's a player that I like and that it seems like he should go in the second round before those last couple of picks. So, like, that's one that I bet a little bit based on my personal opinion. But it seems like the decision makers' opinions are lining up with that. Do not bet things on your own opinion in any draft. That's my words of wisdom there.
Well, you're spot on, because I got egg on my face last year screaming at the Bengals. Listen, you got your.
You wanted O lineman, right?
Wanted O lineman, and Mr.
It
Burris
worked out for him.
I want my binky. we have a few minutes before we wrap up. I mean, I guess my 1 second for your Mechie, by the way, tied to the Patriots, by the way. So you might have a good shot there.
I would love, as a Patriots fan, I would love a second round pick, John Mechie.
I think you got a good shot there. Bill trading down?
Probably, but it seems like everybody's trying to trade down in this draft and nobody wants to trade up. Like Jacksonville would love to trade their pick in this draft and move back a few spots, but it's not going to happen because, like we said, there's no, what would the price of the number 1 pick the last 2 years have been to trade up to get Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence? There almost is no price because you need that quarterback so bad. Whereas this year, if you want to trade up to get an edge rusher, an offensive lineman, sure, there's plenty of prices that you would take, but nobody's offering to do it because it's just not good value.
You live in Massachusetts, like me, in Boston. Can you give us an explanation? I mean, you work for DraftKings. So when are we going to see betting in Massachusetts?
I have no idea. And to be honest, I pay less attention to it than you would think I would as somebody at DraftKings. We're obviously in the home state. It's a home state thing. And it sounds like there's a bill coming through this week that'll be voted on that I think does not include college sports, I heard, which is, a flaw, but it can get changed at some point in time. So maybe there is something around the corner, but it's interesting that Massachusetts has been slow. It's interesting that with DraftKings in Massachusetts, we can't slap something together a little bit quicker, but everything else neighboring Massachusetts is up and running. And I think that should motivate them to get something done more. And it looks like a deal potentially on the table this week could help get the ball rolling there.